Welcome to the ReGen Brands podcast. This is a place for consumers, operators, and investors to learn about the consumer brands supporting regenerative agriculture and how they're changing the world. This is your host, Kyle, joined by my co-host, AC, who's going to take us into the episode.
On this episode, we have Hoda Mohajerani, who is the founder and CEO at Chakra Chai. Chakra Chai is supporting regenerative agriculture with its alchemical truffles and superfood elixirs that activate and nourish the 7 chakras of the body with formulas rooted in ayurvedic medicine. In this episode, we learn about the consciousness behind Chakra Chai's products, Hoda's spiritual and personal journey that led to the creation of the company, and how we need to dig deeper into the word regenerative and think about fundamentally shifting from existing extractive systems. Hoda is an amazing human being, and we were so blessed to spend this time with her. She is a poet and a philosopher and a great friend who brought authenticity, transparency, humility, and a heart-centered vision for the future. We're so excited to share this episode with you all. Here we go.
What's up, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of the ReGen Brands podcast. We are fired up today to have our friend Hoda from Chakra Chai with us. So welcome, Hoda.
Hi, Anthony. Hi, Kyle. I'm really grateful to be here. It's great to see you guys again.
We are very grateful to have you. It's great to see you again as well. It is Chakra Chai. I briefly met you at Expo West, and we had what I would call a brief yet relatively profound experience for me. And we can dive into that a little bit later. But for those who are not familiar with the brand, give us a brief overview of what sort of products you make, what are the SKUs and product lines that you have, and where can people find your products today?
Okay, so we have created 2 product ranges thus far, which are based on the chakra system. So in each product range, we actually have 7 SKUs, and that each one relates to a different chakra. For those people who don't know what a chakra is, it's a Sanskrit word that means wheel, and it references the spinning wheels of the energetic centers in the subtle body of the human being and also in nature. And in modern day medicine and investigations into the chakras and into Ayurveda, which is the oldest form of medicine coming from India, about 5,000-year-old wisdom tradition, they've discovered that a lot of the aspects of the chakras as they were described by the sadhus, the holy men of India, and the original Ayurvedic medicine practitioners, a lot of those aspects correlates with the endocrine system. And so we spent nearly 3 years in R&D with a 3rd generation Gujarati Ayurveda practitioner to create 7 elixirs and 7, if you will, medicinal snacks that are sweetened with raw regenerative honey. And when you ingest these, the old expression, food is medicine. We like to say Chakra Chai is medicine is food. We've tried to formulate everything in such a way where there will be the delight and the enjoyment of eating it, but it is actually addressing deeper issues, both physiological and energetic. And you can purchase Chakra Chai. We would recommend online, of course. And we do have several channel partners in California right now, including the Good Earth and Elroy's in Monterey.
Incredible. And can you give us the brief? You mentioned there's 7 different SKUs in each range. What are the different SKUs? What do you call them?
So we start with the 1st through to the 7th chakra. So from the perineum through to the crown of the head. And the SKU names are root, flow, power, love, truth, insight, and spirit. And we were quite adamant right from the beginning to actually correlate the SKU names with the greater scope or dimensions of what that SKU is actually addressing. So it's interesting to see how people respond from an emotional place to choosing their Chakra Chai, which is one of the exact things we wanted to do, is to start that conversation so we're not just consuming mindlessly.
Yeah. And Kyle and I had that experience firsthand at Expo West. So I want to go right there since we're teeing that up, which is it was very profound, as Kyle said, for me especially. I think I had the root elixir because I told you I was kind of high and just a little up there in the clouds, and I needed to feel more grounded. It was a big show, a lot of energy. It was picking me up off my feet a little bit, and I needed to feel very grounded. And I had the elixir, and probably 30, 40 minutes later, I mean, I felt the weight of it, and not in a bad way, in a very good way, to just feel centered and feel down to earth and rooted. And I know Kyle can kind of share his experience, but Hoda, would love to have you, I guess, just speak to kind of like the diagnosing, or whatever we want to call that, the recommending of each elixir, and kind of how that works, and how, like, a person that's never heard of this or never experienced these products, like, what should they know and what should they understand about that process?
That's a really great question, Anthony, and I'm so happy to hear that that's the experience that you had with Root, because we all on the team, and of course from other customers' testimonials, we know that it is an incredible anchoring. We anchor again within our bodies and upon the earth when ingesting this particular product. And it's a really excellent question in terms of, how do I know which chakra chai is for me, right? Because what we're doing essentially, within the time and culture that we find ourselves right now, we could consider this innovation, right? But only because we've lost touch with these wisdom traditions. It's not innovative if you go to India, or if you go to Persia or any of these other cultures that have deep medicinal histories, right? But right now it's an innovation to say, okay, we're shifting the way that we look at ourselves. So I would like our customers to ask, what is it that I need support with right now? Yeah. And then, for example, the first thing that pops up for somebody might be, oh, I really need support with focus and memory, right? Then we'd like them to ask themselves a second consideration question. Why do I think or feel my memory is actually compromised, or my ability to focus, or being scattered or jittery or any of those things? Why is that? And to go one little level deeper. And in my communication with customers, I found that, using that example about memory and focus, that they will, for example, I'll ask them a few questions. Turns out they just moved home, they just changed jobs, and their job hours are completely different. So now they're totally overdosing on coffee. And so what's happening is that they're unrooted, they're destabilized, and their adrenals are really pushed to the max, right? So instead of giving them the insight, which is for the Agnya, the sixth chakra, the third eye chakra, pineal gland, memory, focus, cognition, all of that, I will give them the first chakra, root, and I'll give them the seventh chakra, which is for the hypothalamus, that controls the parasympathetic nervous system and gives a sense of global calm and stillness, using blue lotus flower essence, for example. So they'll root to rise. They'll be held from beneath and embraced or shielded from above. And that container allows for them to actually function better with regards to their memory, right? By the way, in parentheses, this is a nightmare company and product line for typical CPG
this ain't a
people,
potato chip.
right? This ain't a potato chip. This isn't like, potato chip with reishi. This is, let's talk about who you are and what you need, because the food industry and the food service and the whole system has to be in service to humans and planet. And if we're not, then we're not doing our job. So, yeah. So we have certain consideration questions. And then we also urge people to, for example, either try a single from our website, or if they drop into Good Earth in Mill Valley or Fairfax or any of these stores, that they either try a single or they try a trio pack. because we've actually done constellations where you have the 1-7 heart combo. They're always the axis is always the heart, which is the connecting point between the upper chakras and the lower chakras. So we ask people to try them, and we also ask people to please reach out to us, because we're still a small enough company where we can really drop in with you and be able to answer any questions you may have.
Yeah.
That's incredible. I want to touch on, you mentioned the second question. What did you call it again? Like the what was the type of question you asked? The
Consideration question.
consideration. Yeah, the
Yeah.
consideration question. The fact that just it's so the opposite of Western medicine, where we're looking to just treat whatever's going on. So you mentioned, focus and memory. Instead of just providing that immediately, it's like, well, what's causing that issue to begin with? And let's address that rather than just try to solve this problem that we think we're going to solve when really we're probably not. So I
Well,
think that's awesome.
thank you, Carl. That's such an important point, because, and I have, believe me, in my cabinet, I have vitamin C, I have zinc, these supplements, but the issue with functional food, right, is that it is the lesser of the two evils, or the better derivative of a system that in and of itself is flawed, right? So, food as fuel. Fuel for what? We're not a goddamn car. We're not supposed to be, it's like fuel to just wake up, repeat the grind, carry on, make sure that you're still looking young and beautiful, and you'll live to be 100 years. I mean, when we even talk about longevity with regards to functional foods, it's so what? So that you can live another extra 100 years and keep repeating the same mistakes and not know who you are or why you're here. So it's an allopathic, symptomatic approach that is coming from an essentially flawed system. So now, if we talk about systems change, we can talk about it using the vehicle of one little truffle, one little elixir. Yeah, this is the vehicle through which we're going to bring up these questions and open them up and say, let's address the real underlying issues, both within the individual and within the collective.
I'm trying to stay on track. Yeah, there's too much I want to talk about right now. The analogy with fuel and we're not a car, I think is so spot on. The human body, and I could be completely wrong here, but I think it's all of the cells change over every 7 years. So if we consider fuel in a vehicle, is just moving the vehicle forward. It's not rebuilding the engine or the tires or the body or anything like that. Whereas the food we consume, we're literally rebuilding our bodies with what we consume. So you're spot on. We are not consuming fuel. We are consuming, food that makes us who we are. So I just really resonated with that statement you made. But I want to take it back. You mentioned the ability to go deep with your customers, and I want to share my experience I had with you at Expo West. And for those who aren't watching, I think most of our listeners are listening. Hoda has an energy about her, and Expo West is a massive food show. And there's a ton of things going on all at the same time. And I was actually at a booth across the way from Chakra Chai, and somebody's like, "Oh, you got to go meet Hoda." I was like, okay, cool. And I go to meet Hoda, and big hug immediately. And it was almost like everything else just kind of went out of focus, and it was just she and I in that moment. And I think she's like, "Have you tried an elixir?" And I was like, "Oh yeah, I maybe tried one, but I'd like to try another one. Tell me about these." And Hoda, you put your hands on both my shoulders. And you looked at me, and it almost felt like you were looking through me, and you said, "What do you need?" Or how are you feeling? Or something to that effect. And I was like, whoa, this is getting really deep, really quick. And I said, I think it was about 30, 40 minutes from that moment, I was giving a talk to a number of folks in the regenerative space, and I was a little bit nervous about giving that talk. And I said, I'm feeling a little bit nervous about this talk I'm going to give. And you said, are you nervous in your head or in your heart? And that was that second question we talked about. And I said, I feel like I'm nervous in my heart. I feel like there's a lot riding on this. I want to make sure I do well, not just for me, but for what we're trying to achieve. And you gave me the truth elixir. And I saved it until about 30 minutes before the talk started. And I drank it, and I felt fantastic. I think there was a hint of mint in there, if memory serves correct. And I just felt a sense of clarity. And I feel like I performed well during the talk, and I was able to articulate well and make the points I wanted to make. And I really do feel like that moment had an impact on my performance during
Mm.
that moment. So wanted to share that with you and everybody else.
Oh my God, thank you. I think if I remember correctly, I gave you a little sample cup of love and said, "Here, knock this back," and then I gave you the truth to take with
Mm.
you.
Mm.
That is
And
correct.
you are right. I mean, just first of all, just hearing you say that, and hearing any of our customers and any of our friends reflect their experience back to us
Mm.
is priceless, absolutely priceless, because we're, time and again, even like we ourselves on the team think, what the hell did we do here? Who did this? How did
Yeah.
this? Like,
Mm.
are we all high on our own supply, or is this really working, or is it,
Yeah.
And even if it's placebo, like who cares at this point? People are getting better.
Mm. Mm.
Um,
Hmm.
but so that's so meaningful for me. And yes, you're right. In the truth, we have mint, peppermint, and frankincense,
Mm.
because both peppermint and frankincense have been shown in clinical trials to affect and support a healthy thyroid function.
Mm.
And then, in terms of energetics and spirituality, if you will, um, frankincense obviously has been used for millennia to open and clear space, right?
Mm.
And mint is also cooling and clearing. Like if you have congestion, you can use mint. And so, mint essential oils. So the combination, the synergistic formulation of these two, together with the regenerative volcanic soil grown cacao that we use, that's very high in polyphenols, but also very high energetically and vibrationally. And we know that cacao really supports the heart. Yeah. And you
Mm.
have the reishi and the chaga. And so basically you're getting calmness, you're getting immunity support, you're getting heart nourishment, and then you're having this opening up of the cathedral of the throat, of the voice,
Mm.
so that you can speak your truth honestly, gently, and concisely.
Mm.
So I'm glad, and I'm so sorry I missed the talk, though. Because Expo West is so crazy, 70,000 people, and it's
Mm.
You
just,
you were
if
there,
you
and
have
I
a
feel
booth,
like you
you
missed
can't
it.
do anything.
Yeah.
You were there. You were with me. You were for
Yeah.
sure a
Oh,
part of it.
oh,
Yeah.
thank you.
And if folks don't want to take just Kyle and I's word for it, these products have rave reviews from Charles Eisenstein and Zach Bush. And if those two beings aren't very spiritually in touch and aware of what's going on, then I don't know who is. So you could take their word for it as well. Um, Hoda, you have a really interesting story, and the birth of Chakra Chai is a really deep and spiritual moment for you, and I want to give it the time and the reverence that it deserves. And
Thank
it's a
you.
long story, but I want you just to kind of take that prompt and take us back to where this all started, and we'll go from there.
Okay, thank you. Um, mm, so I had and lost in physical form my
Mm,
only child. His name is Arta. That's Arta.
mm-hmm,
And that name is Avestan Persian. It means truth, talking of the
mm,
truth.
mm,
And it was, I've had a spiritual practice for over 3 decades. Um, but the experience of of the experience of Arta, both of the presence of Arta and of his departure, really was the most radical form of illumination that I have yet received,
mm,
shedding light on myself, my ideas of identity, my place in the world, and the why. Okay, the great
mm,
why am
Mm.
I here? What is my purpose?
mm,
What is the meaning of my life? And he took with him, he stripped the bullshit away.
mm, mm,
And in that space, as burnished and scorched as it was with the grief that a mother experiences from the loss of her child. But that space was so fertile now for the right seed to be planted. And that seed that was planted was truly the seed of love. All that remained was love, and I sat in that love and loss. And it was about a year later, through many days and weeks of meditations and prayers and silences and a very, very deep retreat, so to speak. A year after, around his birthday, I was very deep in meditation when he was present suddenly. And for any of our listeners who do practice meditation, you'll know that when there is that moment where you're removed enough that you're in consciousness, and you're conscious in consciousness, and then communications can take place, right? And it's not like a ghost appearing to you, it's a presence, it's a vibrational frequency. And Arta was present, and he said the words chakra chai. And obviously this is all internal. And I was so proud of my son in that moment, because obviously I recognized this is such a great brand name, So I was just like, you're knocking this out of the park, boy, But I was like, well, what is this? And what am I receiving this for? Right. And he said, this is verbatim. He said, if you wish, you are permitted to move on this, but you don't have to, because I know you're exhausted. Now, I still didn't know what this is, right? Obviously, I knew what chakras are. Obviously, I'm being Persian and, having lived a day or two on this earth, I know what a chai is. But was I supposed to open up a tea house? Was I supposed to go to a co-packer? I didn't even know what a co-packer was at the time, by the way. I thought, should I go to a factory or manufacturer and see if they can, do some, So I didn't know what it was. But what I did know, and this was absolutely 100% clear, there's no effing about, excuse my French, on this one. If I say yes, I have undertaken a responsibility, a mission that I must steward. Yeah. And I have nothing to do with it, so to speak, right? It's like he's offering me the opportunity to be in service. And I don't like that, people. Nobody likes that. We might pretend we like it, but we don't. What we want is for us to feel good and for us to receive, and that's all fine. But as Ram Dass said, it's not service if it's not inconvenient. And God only knows a CPG startup based on consciousness and regeneration can't be any more inconvenient. Okay.
Right.
So I, being the crazy horse that I am, I said, I accept. And when I said I accept, that's when he said, okay, here. And he showed me. I mean, when I say he showed me, I mean, I saw on the screen of that space that I was in, the spiritual aspect, the abundant sort of regenerative farming aspect, the people, the coming together, the cultural elements of it. The thing was so systemic that I was absolutely overwhelmed. And I thought, oh my God, how am I going to do this? How am I going to do this? But it was too late. I'd accepted. He'd kind of like, pokered me out of that. Like he'd played my hand like very, very intelligently. And I was like, oh shit. Okay. So I came out of the meditation and I fell on my face in prostration and I started begging God. I just said, please, if this wasn't, and I've said this before on other interviews, I really, because I'm very self-analytical, I said, if this wasn't just the grieving, the delusions of a grieving mother, if this really happened and you want me to do this on this scale, in this way, I beg you to bring the people I need to me because I can't do it alone.
Wow.
I cannot do it alone. And through what I can only call divine architecture, one by one, the people have been constellated and we've been building this a step at a time, all the way to this moment. Every moment has led up to this moment now. Yeah.
Wow.
So that's the origin story of Chakra Chai, and I've spent the last 4 years basically completely and utterly dedicated and committed to realizing this vision or die trying. Yeah.
Constellation. That's the word right there that you finished us out with. I mean, that's wild. Thank you for sharing that. I know it's heavy.
Thank you for receiving. It is, but it's also, it is. Can I just speak to that for a second?
Please.
It is heavy because the stuff of matter is heavy because the tight shoe of this mortal coil is heavy. We are constantly, consciously or unconsciously, trying to transcend our own human condition. And in these moments of grace and in these moments of union with the right other vibrational frequencies, with the right other humans and the right intentionalities, the most incredible beauty and rightness is birthed, And so I always say, it's like, yes, it was a tragedy, but this is a triumph that was born out of tragedy. This is an opportunity that's been offered out of that, And so I urge anyone listening, don't be afraid, please don't be afraid to lean in to the sharp points because they're only sharp and tearing away at the veils, at what no longer serves us,
Yep.
And then you just become freer, more free. Yeah. So yeah, I'm really, I feel rather light right now. Yeah. Depth is not heavy. Depth is, there's a difference. Yeah.
Yeah, Anthony told me yesterday to make sure I got a good night of sleep because today's podcast interview was going to be at a level that we haven't really reached before. I will say that Anthony was spot on in his assessment, and I'm very glad to have been able to receive your story and just to be a part of the conversation today. So, thank you.
Thank you.
And I hate to switch gears to something that's definitely a lower vibration, but my business brain is going there, and I want to give you an opportunity to speak to this, Hoda, because I think it's important, which is this has been a challenge, and it's been a challenge for all the reasons we've talked about, which is this is a new, you're basically creating a new category. It's a new kind of way of marketing it. It has different product attributes. You're self-diagnosing, all these things, right? So I want you just to share some high level journey pieces and some feedback to the audience of what it's been like building it. And then commercially, what has worked, what hasn't worked, what pieces are you looking towards in the future? Like, how has this been to just build this commercially?
I will attempt to answer those questions, but I'd like to just say it's not low vibrationally, the questions that you're asking. One, because I know the intention with which you're asking these questions of me right now. And that is a very high and honorable, noble intention that you have. And that infuses it with very high vibration. Secondly, these questions are only low vibration when we're operating from anything less than a noble intentionality, because we're looking at it from an extractive perspective. Okay, how can we maximize? Everybody probably listening to this, and you yourselves obviously know about extractive systems and extractive economies, and how we've been doing things. So it has been challenging. First of all, I have a fierce little team. And my co-founder, Sean Arta, is a systems thinker. And so the two of us get on like a house on fire. We can really, see the 30,000 foot view and start to build. And it's kind of our favorite thing is actually to map out, right? So the process of building it in terms of what does the system, what does a truly conscious regenerative business model look like? And what are the outcomes that we are looking to achieve and aiming to achieve? Those parts have been a wonderful process, absolutely wonderful. On the ground, the process, I mean, especially because we came to market bang in the middle of COVID, right? So, I mean, it was just, that's something my son didn't tell me about, It's like, yeah, let's see whether she's got the metal for this, So look, COVID aside, yeah, because the systems that we have put into place themselves are flawed and are extractive, generally speaking, people have been reluctant to the general people in the consumer packaged goods industry, okay, have been reluctant to give chakra chai the time of day because they brush it off either as A, hippie woo-woo, and B, as, oh, these people are wearing idealistic rose-tinted glasses about how the world is going to hold hands and sing kumbaya, right? And see, because, obviously economically they're looking to see whether the process is it hot fill, is it cold fill, how much line time can we get? I understand all of these things. But my only response to A, B, and C thought or perspectives of the general industry, right, is, okay, let's say all of those things are true about Chakra Chai and other brands like Chakra Chai, yes, who are innovating and disrupting and creating a new opportunity and a new category and all of that. What the fuck are you guys doing? You're rearranging the goddamn chairs on the deck of the Titanic.
Right.
Okay. So I am actually here to say, no, I'm going to call your bluff. Okay. If you want to see me have a better profit and loss sheet, if you want to see better numbers, if you want to, then put your goddamn money where your mouth is. Don't put it in plastic meats and plastic rice and lab grown fish. Don't just, as amazing and important as it is, and we're working together with a regenerative farmer in Goleta, I know the challenges that he faces. I'm not just on the land, but the financial challenges he faces, the capitalization challenges, the emotional and mental weight that's on him to be able to, through thick and thin, continue to work this regenerative farm and grow the medicinal herbs. I understand we're allocating capital to the infrastructure, right? But again, there are multiple reasons that are not all kosher. Okay? It's bigger bucks, it's land acquisition, there are a lot of different elements. And I'm saying, please, anybody who's listening, who's a potential investor, who's a potential ally, think about, where is all this product going to go? How is it going to get to the market, right? How are you going to shift the perception of the marketplace to actually want to buy regenerative, for example? Let me give you one example, and then I'll, stop bogarting the mic. Yeah. But basically, I can't remember which ingredient it was for now. I'm trying to remember which herb it was for. But our head of supply chain and inventory, who's dedicated to making sure that we're 100% organic right now, but to try and become 100% regenerative with our supply chain, right? A pound of that ingredient, organic, is $20, and a pound of that ingredient, regenerative, is $60. Okay.
Wow.
Okay. And I will, I will contact him and be reminded on which ingredient it was that he told me about. So how is that supposed to make me be able to offer a product to humans who can afford to buy the product? Yeah.
Right.
So we need investors and thinkers and policymakers and people who are experts in their respective fields to step up and become the elders, to bring together brands with farmers, to bring together brands with policymakers, to bring together the people, the farms, the food makers like us, right? And the ideology transformers, right? And we need these elders to support us with that. So I don't know if that really answered your question, but I have faced challenges, but I just don't, because with us, we know that we're being moved by another force. And then we're translating the vertical into the horizontal plane. This is a certainty for me, and it's a certainty for the people on my team. If you're only operating with a visual of the horizontal, be in this world, but do not be of it, is what I'm saying. So we're operating, and because of that trust, because of that faith, because of that integrity, we've made it through some really close shaves, as a startup. Yeah,
A lot to
changing.
pull out there.
Yeah.
Things that resonated with me were, there's so much bullshit at Expo West, and we've talked about this on other episodes. It's like so hard to walk around that whole show and just not want to tear booths down and get upset, because it's like, if it's not, we're very biased, but if it's not regenerative, like, what are we doing? And secondly, within the regenerative movement, we've done an amazing job and still need to do more, centering farmers and spending so much time upstream, worried about the actual land transition and the agricultural practices. But we're forgetting this whole supply chain has so many linkages and so many steps, and we're not really stepping back and having a holistic conversation to solve for the whole thing at once. And the brands, and especially the emerging brands, are being really left out of that conversation, especially on the capital side. And sometimes I feel like we're the only ones sitting over in the corner raising our hands saying, what the hell's going on with that? So hopefully we can kind of continue to raise that issue and elevate that, because it's a problem, and it's going to continue to be a problem until we solve it, because we can't have a regenerative food system without regenerative brands, right? And then I think on the point about COGS, I would love to see people inside the transactions that are happening put their money where their mouth is. So the financial backing is not all on the investors. And here's what I mean by that. I mean, if New Hope Network is all about regen like they say they are, give people free booths. If UNFI and KHE are all about regen brands like they say they are, reduce slotting fees for those brands. If Sprouts and Whole Foods and natural grocers are all about regen like they say they are, give people free end caps. These are all things that really aren't that hard to do. And I'm not trying to specifically call those people out, because they're all doing amazing things already. I'm just saying we can and we should do more, and we should do more monetarily, than just lip service. Because right now what I see is I see more lip service than action. I see some action that should be applauded and be thanked for, but we need more action than just the lip service.
I agree with you, Anthony. I have a question for you and Kyle. Why do you think that is?
Lack of proof of concept is the number one reason, in my opinion. With the exception of the recent acquisition of Moonshot, there is yet to be a proof in the pudding for a regenerative brand at this stage in the game. And I think with the current climate and anything can speak better about the investment climate than I can, but with the way investment money is, I don't want to say drying up, but changing, and the sort of like natural food CPG boom that has been the last 10 years, the frame of thinking for most of these investors and retailers and everybody else right now is like, okay, we're willing to take a bet on what we know is going to work. And so far, like, that concept hasn't been proved for a regenerative CPG brand. And I think that's one of the biggest hurdles we have to solve for up front. The problem with that, though, is it's never going to look the same because it's not a turn and burn 5-year VC funded brand who's looking to flip and bail, because you can't do that with regenerative. So it's a really complicated problem.
So I love your response, and I'd like to, if I may, unpack it just a little bit as well. So kind of like, let's work our way from the bottom to the top. So yes, turn and burn, absolutely. It's not like that. When, this brings us to the question of what is regeneration? What is regenerative? Okay. So when we really, if it's just another buzzword that we're going to throw out and be on the regen bandwagon, just like we were greenwashing, now we're regen washing. Okay, great. But that's not what it is for people like us. Okay. People who are dedicated to this way. So what is regenerative? And if we begin to understand the definitions, I'm going to go full circle depending on time, to get back to what that definition could be. Okay. Then we immediately, in a logical sequence, the next logical inference is that therefore we cannot do a quick flip of a business that just sells because they've shown 10 times return on investment within 2.5 years, and then they're going to sell in 5 years and Bob's your uncle. Okay. So we can't do that. Now we talk about proof of concept. So the proof of concept is problematic because the context of what is regeneration, what is the definition of regeneration, what does a regenerative brand and a regenerative business model look like, what does a regenerative world look like, these require systems thinking. Okay. And that has not been defined yet. So the proof of concept, you cannot have that, like you're saying, that proof of concept within a context that denies the parameters for that trial. Okay. Okay. So that's not going to work. Then my essential question is, why do they even want that proof of concept?
Fear.
Why do they? Now we're getting closer. Because there is still a commitment on the part of the majority to the existing system, and it is based on greed and it is based on fear. And both, because greed is a product of fear. And what is fear a product of? Fear is a product of not being able to see, not having certainty of what the essence of existence is. And, I wrote to you in an email correspondence that we were having, Anthony, that it's time for the philosophers and the thinkers and the poets to take their rightful place at the table of where we are headed in terms of the direction and the future of our planet and of our humanity and of culture. Okay. So if we want to actually still be here in 100 years and be here on a planet that is thriving, of cultures and communities that are more enlightened and conscious and integrated, right? And these conditions have to be in place for it to be regenerative. Because if something is in a constant state of decay and chaos and death, it can't regenerate, right? So
Right.
to do that, we need to shift the way that we're looking at things. And yeah, maybe the corporate board of Whole Foods doesn't really want to shift that. And maybe initially they will. They'll say, all right, let's give a couple of free end caps to a couple of these people because this seems to be the general buzz and we have to stay ahead of the curve. So their intentionality may still not be correct. As soon as we get those end caps, as an example, the conversation will start with the customers. And then the customers are going to tell everybody what time it is, right? So
Right.
it's really a systemic problem and it requires systems change, but systems change cannot come about if we continue to use the same modes of thinking that got us into this shit show in the first place. So
Hold on, I think you're
let's go
spot
back to
on.
the drawing board.
Yeah, and what I think Anthony and I both have our own regenerative journeys, and we talked about on a previous episode, like our aha moments. I'm curious to know from your perspective and in your experience and your regenerative journey, if you will, like when did you first become aware of the concept of regeneration? Why did that become important for your business? And walk us through that part of the Chakra Chai story.
That's a good question. As a teenager, I was always and into my 20s and 30s, I was always very politically active. And initially, I started as a teenager being active with Greenpeace, right? So I was very, very environmentally motivated, yeah. And back in those days, we didn't call it medicine; we just called it acid. So I'm just saying, I know you didn't see this coming, but you take a couple of good trips with good people in nature, and you'll see we've got a situation on our hands, and so that bond just was so deep for me, and I wanted to do everything I could to save the earth, and so it started very early on for me. But then, with the United Nations languaging around it with sustainability, and we still have the United Nations, the SDG goals and all of that, it's there was something that didn't sit right with me. So I kind of dropped out of the activism as the term sustainability started to really pick up momentum, right? Because I couldn't put my finger on it. I wasn't quite sure why. But still continue. Corporate. Yes, basically. And then I still continue to do my little part by, having the CSA box, that I was getting and supporting farmers and going to farmers markets and all of that. And then this gift was gifted to myself by Arta, and there was this inherent mission of rebirth, essentially. And that rebirth led me to explore this together with my co-founder, Sean. And I actually believe he was the first one who said the word regeneration and regenerative processes. And I was like, let's explore that more. Let's look at that. And then that was just, it was kind of like from there, that's then all we did. It was like consciousness, regeneration, consciousness, regeneration, consciousness, regeneration. And these two are essentially the one is the product of the other. And both are the products of love. Okay. That's, we can get into that if you want. But that's kind of where it started with Chakra Chai, and the first discussions with Sean is we want to build something that has the capacity to, in a circular way, we talk about circular economies, but cradle to cradle processes, right? Where it has like the snake eating its own tail. It's alchemical. I mean, I'm also like understanding things as I'm speaking with you guys, right?
Right.
It is a physical embodiment. Chakra Chai is seeking to be, and what all of us are doing, yes, is the symbol of the self-renewing, the phoenix, right? Or that snake. So how do we build that model, and where do we cap it? Because if we want it to be regenerative, it has to be capped. Yeah. Because there are only so many, even if like we do an aggregate of farmers, regenerative farmers, so that we can get our supply of ashwagandha. Okay. And we can get it with that level of potency and active components, and the farms and the farmers and the land will not be depleted. Okay, how many other companies are going to want ashwagandha for their products? Okay, where are we all capping this? Because if we don't cap it, it won't be able to regenerate. Yeah. So that sort of then goes back into the greed aspect that we were discussing before. So that's where my regeneration sort of journey began. And I digressed a little bit into other aspects of it.
It made me ponder on a couple of things. One, I think Will Harris said on Rogan, like Earth has a carrying capacity. Like it has a finite like carrying capacity, and we need to be like cognizant of that and like build around that, build systems that honor that. And kind of going back to the industry piece is like, I think we've done an amazing job supporting farmers, and we've built entire coalitions like the Kiss the Ground and what they're doing to lobby in the Farm
Farmers
Bill
footprint,
right, but we haven't done that on the brand side. And those people I mentioned earlier, they can't go do the right thing until we give them the right direction and we influence them to do so. And so I think there's just work to be done there. And I think that's exactly what we're trying to do with this podcast. I think that's exactly what Kyle's trying to do with the ReGen Coalition is like, we need to tell them this is how we need you to help. And then we need to persuade them to actually do that. Right. And there's reformation and there's revolution, and we kind of need both, because the existing systems are not going to go away overnight, right? So how do we reform enough to stay alive and prosper and survive or thrive, whatever, in the existing system, but also hold the tension of this is the aspirational goal, and we need to keep reminding ourselves to kind of push forward to that North Star. And I think it's easier said in theory and harder in execution, but it's what we're all trying to do.
Absolutely. And as a good omen, there was a white cat that just walked across the path. I agree with you. And look, I've always been very big on reform. Okay. And there are other players aside from direct investors, right, who can really support brands when, for example, a brand like Chakra Chai, right now, we're at a really critical stage, right, with our capital runway. And so to make the decision of how do I retain my talent, and where do I get the budget from to sink? I mean, it's normal for startups these days to be sinking 20, 25, 30K a month on PR and marketing, where do I get the budget to sink 5 or 10 a month on marketing? Yeah. And then who are the marketing and PR companies who are like some of the other organizations that you mentioned before, Anthony, who are talking about how much they want to support, et cetera, et cetera. Well, just like lawyers do pro bono, we need to set up these structures where we have pro bono, so to speak, support systems in place, and if we look at indigenous communities and indigenous wisdom, both from the First Nations in the Americas, as well as from ancient wisdom traditions like Hinduism and Ayurveda and Persian, Zoroastrianism, Islam, all of them. When you look at these other cultures, you see that there's an infrastructure in place of support that supports those who actually need the nourishment, need the nurturance, okay, in the extractive capitalist model, not the conscious capitalist model, but the extractive capitalist model, we support those who are already strong. Okay?
Yeah.
So somebody's already made it, and then we put more money in there, or we invite them. This is something that I love about what you two are doing, is because I'm a nobody.
Anybody who's
Measured by
met
that,
you would never say that.
Yeah,
Just
not
so
to
you know.
us.
measured by that yardstick.
Yeah.
Yeah, measured by that faulty yardstick. Yeah, they haven't heard of me before, but you've put me on this podcast. And if you only were thinking of, which big names can I get onto my podcast, then you're also thinking in extractive terms, not in actual, delivery of value and capturing of value and the sharing of that. Yeah. So we do need those supports in order to be able to make the necessary reforms to create a, hopefully sooner rather than later, a critical mass tipping point. Yeah. Because we really don't have that much more time. And I'm not trying to be a scaremonger or a fearmonger, but we really don't. If they say 60 more topsoils are left to us, 60
Right,
more
60
summers,
more harvests.
60 more harvests.
Yeah.
That's 60 more summers. I'll be dead and gone by then, so it won't matter to me. But whoever has children, it'll matter to them, right? So we've got to keep doing what we're doing and believing that amazing, incredible human beings like you will come through to unite our voices and get it out there, and that our customers will continue to support us.
Yeah, I really appreciate that. And I'm not even sure how or what I'm planning to respond with my brain. I think I'm so in the moment that I'm just absorbing the conversation, which is not a bad place to be. And to Anthony's point earlier, like as podcasters, we sort of have a playbook where we transition and we pivot and we talk about the next topic on our agenda. And it feels like almost disingenuous to like keep pushing the conversation to these new areas. So like what I'm supposed to do right now is to ask you, so like what's in the future for Chakra Chai? But it just feels like such an unnatural pivot for like where the conversation has been, So but at the
Please
same time,
forgive me. I have a carry on.
I think it's important that we understand like what is next for Chakra Chai. What are you planning to do next? Is it focusing on retail expansion? Is it, like you mentioned, like focusing on getting some investment capital so that you can afford to expand in retail, because that's not a cheap game to play. So what's on the horizon?
Look,
look,
this is they say that when you're when you're raising capital, if you go to people and say, I need money, you'll get advice. If you want to get their money, you have to say, I'm here to ask for your advice. Okay. And I'm like, listen, fuck that. I'm sorry. I just can't do this anymore. Okay. I cannot do it anymore. I can't, like you can't ask the next question without it being inauthentic, unless you do it as authentically as you just did. Right. Look, I literally can't. I can't carry on. The revenue is not enough. I'm going to be transparent about it. Am I the best CEO in the world? My team thinks so, but my P&L sheet doesn't. I need, you know what I need? I'll tell you what's in the future for Chakra Chai in a minute. But what I need right now is...
You need an elixir.
I need an elixir. I need for people who come to the table and say, I know how to do this better. Will you please allow me to? Will you let me help you? I don't need shoulda, woulda, couldas. I don't need somebody to tell me how the right way to do it is and then disappear. I need people who will say, because that's all ego, who will say, I'll be the first to say, I am learning. I am teachable. I want to be able to do better. My team wants to be able to do better. We want to become better stewards and with more savoir-faire to take this enterprise, take this ship to where it's meant to go. Who is out there who is willing to share their expertise with us? Who is out there who's willing to, share their not only fiscal, monetary capital resources, but their intelligence resources, their experiential resources, their network resources, in order for us to be able to move forward, right? That's what we need right now. What's in the future of Chakra Chai? I don't mean to be facetious, but whatever God has willed. Okay? If you want me to tell you that we're going to be in all of the major stores where we're perfectly positioned, whether that be Erewhon or whether that be, Bristol Farms, or that we're going to open up our own experiential retail stores so that people can come in and have that entire full body, mind, soul experience. I can tell you all of that, and all of that may be true if it be thy will, as Leonard Cohen said. And I really, truly, and I'm not an evangelist in that sense, but God has to be brought back into the conversation, because honestly, the future is now. Every day when I wake up, it's the future of Chakra Chai, and I'm doing the best that I can, and my team are doing the best that they can. Every single day we're paving the way for whatever that future is. Hopefully we're enacting divine will in our actions, and we're calling other people who are moved from that place to exact change for good in the world to connect with us.
Not at all. Again, not the answer I was expecting, but in the best way possible.
Look, you have had some really prolific guests, and you will continue to have some really prolific guests on your show, because your podcast is going to continue to grow as this movement continues to gain momentum, and the necessity of what we're doing becomes more and more apparent. And you have all of my goodwill and energy for that, and for the future of ReGen Brands podcast. And honestly, as much respect as I have for the people who have an immense amount of information and knowledge and facts and scientific data points and all of this, okay, it's time that we come from a different organ, a different super sophisticated machine, if you will, or intelligence within our beings, and that's the intelligence of the heart. And when people talk about heart-centered business all the time, or heart-centered company culture, and if you really invite them to go in deep into the journey of the heart, they piss their pants. So we need to bring it to the, I'm literally like, that's all I'm going to do. Whether I end up being successful, having a successful business or whatever, that's my job, my role here is to say, if we want to see the outcomes and the desirable futures for ourselves, for our children, for the planet, we have to go to the heart of the matter. And there is no way to go to the heart of the matter other than through the heart and into the heart, and then operate from that place out. And if that means that it kind of fucks with your trigger questions on your podcast, then so be it.
I love it. I appreciate it.
I do. I've been on another podcast, Stephanie reached out to me afterwards. She said, I kept trying to get you to go somewhere where You wouldn't go. You just
Yeah.
wouldn't go there. So, but please ask me, because I will do my best to answer as best as I can. Whatever.
We don't need
Give
you
it
to
to
go
me.
anywhere. We don't need you to go anywhere other than exactly where we went. I mean, the transparency and the humility and the vision are unmatched and so accepted and so appreciated. And just, the last question we wrap with is, how do we scale regenerative brands? And you just answered it. And it's acting from the heart. And that's exactly what we needed you to say and exactly what we needed to hear. And hopefully, more people can tap into that, because that's definitely been a big part for me. And if we don't change hearts and minds, and hearts is first for a reason, then, we're not going to get any of this done.
Well said.
Well, that drops very deeply in mine, Anthony. Yeah.
Love you, Hoda. Thanks for joining us.
I love you guys so much. When can I hug you both?
Hopefully before next Expo West.
Hopefully soon.
Good God, absolutely, absolutely, yeah. So it's been a real pleasure.
It's been our pleasure.
Thank you so much for sharing everything you shared. And I'll add one additional adjective to Anthony's list, is the level of authenticity today. It struck me as it just struck me in a very positive way, and I appreciate that.
Thank you.
For show notes, episode transcripts, and more information on our guests and what we discuss on the show, check out our website, regen-brands.com. That is regen-brands.com. You can also find our ReGen recaps on the website. ReGen recaps take less than 5 minutes to read and cover all the key points of the full hour-long conversations. You can check out our YouTube channel, ReGen Brands Podcast, for all of our episodes with both video and audio. The best way to support our work is to give us a 5-star rating on your favorite podcast platform, subscribe to future episodes, and share the show with your friends. Thanks for tuning in to the ReGen Brands Podcast, brought to you by the ReGen Coalition and Outlaw Ventures. We hope you learned something new in this episode, and it empowers you to use your voice, your time, and your dollars to help us build a better and more regenerative food system. Love you guys.